All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Kaplan School of Architecture lecture series, where this year we're exploring the architecture of design, a means to explore the design that goes into designing. Today we are here to learn more about housing, specifically affordable housing, and what it asks of us to design for this critically important fundamental human right, housing. I'd like to start by thanking our events committee, Teresa Rossano, who will be our incoming chair this coming year, Morgan Oster, Ashley Simone, Ella Parsons, and Khadija Didan. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that we occupy the land of indigenous peoples and that Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Also, our next lecture is going to be on March 21st. This is going to be a special event. We're going to be joined by Holly Street Studio, who is bringing with them Dig Studio, landscape architects in Phoenix. So this will be a unique opportunity to share a lecture space with the School of Landscape Architecture, where it'll be 20 minutes of the architect presenting, 20 minutes the landscape architect, followed by 20 minutes jointly presenting on a shared project that they recently completed. So that'll be exciting. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Kenny Wong, co-director of the Arizona Research Center for Housing Equity and Sustainability, ARCHES, and Druckman Institute of Housing Equity Lab, for the coordinator of the University of Arizona, who is going to talk about an upcoming event.
Thank you, Oscar, and looking forward to our talk this evening. I just wanted to invite you all to a special screening of Fault Lines, a new documentary taking a look at the housing crisis in San Francisco, California. And so, what happens in California and Los Angeles, I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that. And there's lessons that we can learn for our context of Tucson. So the screening is free. There's a QR code up there if you'd like to register. It'll be at 4:30 on Wednesday over in the Cesar Chavez building. So please register, it's free. It'll be after studio. And I'll be hosting moderating a panel with Tisha Tallman of the Primavera Foundation, Keith Bentley of CIRO, as well as the director Yoav Atias. So thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. And now I'd like to call up Director of the School of Architecture, Ryan Smith, who will introduce our guest speaker for today.
Welcome, everyone, and welcome, students. We're really excited to have you here tonight. And we're really excited to welcome and introduce Lorcan O'Herlihy. I said that right. Yeah. Lorcan and the firm LOHA, LOHA sometimes referred to as Building in Place. We'll be talking a little bit about the book and wanted to highlight a little bit about him and the firm tonight as we get started. We can talk about the firm's many accolades and design awards, including being ranked #1 design firm of the country by Architect Magazine's Architect 50, and Lorcan's the founding principal of LOHA, and named AIA Los Angeles Gold Medal recipient. So these public notices are evidence of something much more meaningful in the work of Lorcan and the firm. In the firm's recent book that I just showed, titled Building in Place, Architecture Rooted in Context and Social Equity, the book's introduction explains the firm's approach. I really like this excerpt, so I'm going to read it. Architecture is telling a story. It is about specific lives and specific places, the exact location where people work and play and carry out their daily routines, whether uplifting and inspiring or enervating and mind-numbing. The stories, this is my editorial comment and the work of the firm, is about redlining in South Los Angeles, and the continuous renewal in the cultural and artistic melting pot of Silver Lake. They are about embracing the pessimism and economic struggles of Brush Park, in the collapsed ruins of Detroit. They are about implanting something brand new, housing for the unhoused, on a railway median, beneath, on one of the world's largest freeway overpasses, where there was no hope of life before. They are about percolating waters of timeless American Indian oasis, hiding in the rush hour streets of a blithely unknowing metropolis. In the United States today, nearly 1 in 3 American households is cost burdened, meaning they spend 30% or more. Now I think it's 40% or more of their income on housing. National home ownership in the US has steadily declined since 2005. Escalating costs for buyers and renters and the increasing expense of maintenance and operation are forcing Americans out of their homes and preventing many others from finding reasonably affordable housing. Although this once was a problem reserved for larger cities like San Francisco and New York, it is now affecting developing cities, suburbs, small towns, and rapidly growing and gentrifying areas like Tucson, Arizona. This is why we're honored today to have Lorcan join us, and it's appropriate to discuss how community engagement and design of housing by LOHA can inspire us as students, faculty, and practitioners to expand our creative energies in the service of what I believe is a fundamental human right, the access to safe, affordable, and inspiring housing. The work of Lorcan and LOHA Architects is not about them. It's about the people they serve and the communities they design for and they design with. The work of LOHA is social equity enacted through design and construction. It responds to the socioeconomic, socio-environmental, and socio-political landscape in which they work. It is rooted in place and provides an excellent example of architecture as a design project and architecture as a community project. It's our vision in the School of Architecture at the University of Arizona that every professional student that comes out of the BArch and MArch program has the principles, the ethos, and ability to design housing equitably. Join with me in welcoming Lorcan O'Herlihy to the University of Arizona and the School of Architecture.
Thank you for having me here. This is a pleasure. I've been here once before, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago, so it's a pleasure to be back here. You mentioned a very good point about the nature and the importance of housing as a pedagogical strategy. As an architect, one wants to think of why, or the philosophy behind what you do something. My background is that I had studied undergrad in California, and I went to London to the AA to get my master's degree. And it's interesting, wherever you go in this world, if you look at the history of architecture, certainly Europe, housing is how one defines cities. And when they try to understand the DNA of cities, they look at housing. Thus, Corbu, among others, in the early years, and Hilberseimer and all these wonderful architects from Europe were defining what cities were. It's something that I think the US is going to get there, too. To me, it means a lot to me to be involved with housing to the degree that I am. We as a practice are about 25 of us. It's a team. I'm honored to have a great core people in my practice. My role right now is to continue to carry the DNA of what we've done over the years and seen architecture as a culture of redefining how people should live. I'm convinced and committed to the culture of people. Part of my background at Iron Paint Partners and Stephen Hall's, among others, which I spent my internships, well, I'm sure all of you students will end up spending places as well in the future. Certainly not Iron Paint, forgive me, but others. But that experience meant a lot to me, and it was learning from those architects. But one thing that reminds me is, which is relevant to me and resonates with me, is having worked on the Louvre Museum for 4 years, and certainly with Stephen Hall, worked with cultural projects, I always thought I was fated to get involved with cultural projects as a practitioner. Ultimately, it found its way into housing, and I've recognized the value of the culture of people, and that is what housing is about. It's about those who live in it. And I think, Ryan, you said some good points, Barry, just in the introduction about how that's what it's about. It's about the people, it's about embracing that concept, and how do we solve a problem? How, if people spend 30% of their money in living, how can they have a robust life without always worrying? So one needs housing. It will help for a better place in this world. And that's very important. So today we're just going to present projects from my new book by Rizzoli, Building in Place, Architecture Rooted in Context and Social Equity. What the book does and what my firm does is draws impact solutions and strategies which demonstrate our commitment to artistry, social equity, and context. And in the hope that we can elevate the human condition. Those are all critical points. It's about context, it's about understanding where it is. And that's extremely important in terms of all the work that we do. Just from early part of this lecture, I want to explain that what the title means to me. So Building in Place, the title of the book reflects on the work in the new volume. Now, there are one intentional double entendre here. So if you take the word building, which can be a verb, as in to construct an edifice, to fabricate from scratch, to raise something from the ground up. All these represent that term building. It also refers to the noun, as in building, a structure. Place, too, has multiple meanings, as in to put something somewhere, such as to place an object on a table or a building on a plot of land. Then there's another meaning, as in some place, somewhere, specific location, with a deeper, subtle connotation, implying a spot with a very specific history, culture, identity, tone, vibe, for want of a better word. Call it what you will, but alive with the beat of its own existence. And that's what that book is about. It's about both. It's about context, it's about place, it's also about this thing that we do, which is producing architecture. We build in place. When we're fortunate and successful, architecture evolves, and that's what drives our work. The title was something that meant a lot to me, thus that was the premise behind Building in Place. Well, I'm going to share with you a number 4 housing projects, 2 of which supportive housing, one which is a co-living project, and in addition to that, a dance school. And I wanted to show that last project as well because it shows that all the ideas we develop in these typology of housing can also be transitioned to other types of projects and typologies, such as a dance school. East Intersection Supportive Housing in Annenberg Paseo is a project in South Los Angeles. And this is about and embodies what I mean when I say living histories of a site. It is very site-specific, this project. It's a critical story behind it. It's a median between 2 roads, as you can see right here. This is the site. It was between Broadway and Athens Way. So these were 2 roads that had existed, and this was a shortcut to get onto this freeway. This being the confluence of the 110 and 105 freeway in Los Angeles, which is the busiest confluence of 2 freeways in the United States. So one can well imagine, not a site to do housing. Los Angeles is struggling, needless to say, with providing sites for housing. The land value has gone through the roof. So these types of projects and these sites are the only ones that are remaining right now. What are these leftover spaces, whether it's a median in terms of wedge shape or these other types of medians? The city of Los Angeles has over 1,700 properties like this. And they've now realized that they need to be those available for nonprofit developers to be able to provide affordable housing or supportive housing. This is one of the first ones that they've put out there. We were fortunate enough to land this project with the city, with our wonderful client, Holis Communities, a nonprofit developer. How it works is the city provides the land for 99 years for $1. Thus, the land is free. The second critical aspect of this project, which always undermines other types of supportive housing projects, is the need for parking. What's wonderful about this one project was that that was not required. That was also built into this particular request for qualifications for those who choose to go after the project. So we were not required to do parking. That in itself saves $2 to $3 million because of the cost of doing a concrete structure to provide parking and then put housing above it and provide the fire rating requirement, 3-hour rated. That's a $2 to $3 million that is off the table, which is wonderful. The land itself, even a land like this, probably would cost in the city of Los Angeles $2 or $3 million. So by virtue of those $5 to $6 million savings, this became an opportunity for my client and us. It is a 54-unit supportive housing project, needless to say, on an immensely challenging site, as you can see in this image. It's located between the Imperial Highway to the south, which is right, as you can see right here, Imperial Highway south, and Broadway here, and this is Athens Way. It is actually considered a critically challenged site, which there was never anything ever envisioned to be built there. There was no plumbing, no electricity availability, nothing, so we had to start from scratch. And that's kind of the most interesting thing. The other element of this project that speaks volumes is the city council person, Marquise Grissom, liked containers, and that was part of the mandate. If we do this project, will we explore the idea of do a container project? He was excited about the idea of being able to build in factory while we're producing all the required work on the site at the same time, in the hope to save a year in terms of the schedule. It didn't quite work that way because it also transitioned with the pandemic, which destroyed everything in terms of the supply chain, in terms of materials and other things. So in terms of the scheduling, that went out the window. In concept, it was a good idea. It is organized along the spine of Broadway Street as a series of 16 staggered containers, boxes, and it's connected by a series of walkways to create a single unified building. So here you can begin to see that represents all the floor plan. This is the site, and then there's the circulation right down the middle. So those are the big ideas behind it. The programming including gardens, space for the farmer's market, a small lab for startup testing, the making and selling of goods. Programming also was critical with terms of healthy heating, so we provide an urban farm on the site as well. Big challenge was we had to design it in a very compact and efficient way, each of these containers. And the open plan certainly allowed for the idea of a kitchen, bathroom, bedroom as an open plan. So that was one of the key issues there. There's an axonometric, so it was connected by a series of walkways to create a single unified building and intentionally scattered along the inside. So here you begin to see here that we designed it with this idea of the circulation exterior access. This was crucial as well in terms of providing passive design strategies. Can people enter from outside? And certainly you can in Los Angeles. So that represented a very important aspect of the design. Equally, we did provide rooftop farms. All this is part of the urban farm. Community terraces. This particular road, called Athens Way, was vacated, the second street in Los Angeles. It became in a sense, a pocket park. So this became the front lawn for the tenants who live in the building, but also was open to the community. So this is an open now park, which has been finished for about a year. So all the landscaping is growing. The other critical thing about this project was that we needed this extra land right here because the freeway is right here. And we had to make sure that as the toxins from the freeway was pulling into the building, is that we wanted to be able to plant multiple trees to create an opportunity to cleanse the air. And that was crucial. So the city vacated it, and we're able to build all this paseo here that will over the years grow to be in a very robust green lung, for want of a better word, meaning that it will pull in all the toxins from the freeway. Ideally, we'll have more and more electric cars. Ideally, the toxins will be reduced both in terms of health and also in terms of sound. That's our hope. There's an early rendering of the project. And there's, again, the development of the paseo, which it was a very important aspect because you see it's no longer a road. It's essentially a bicycle path, which is also about establishing a new culture in Los Angeles to reduce the need for cars and begin to recognize other ways of transportation. This is the context, and this is what we were dealing with in terms of adjacencies, as you can see. Culture of Los Angeles, as they say. This represents, of course, the big idea behind working with containers is that as we go through design and approvals, we can start the factory, at the factory to fabricate the units while we're doing the grading, preparation, and foundations. So all this is going on while we're building it. Then they ship the containers and install. Clearly, it took longer than 3 days, but in the end, this is the premise behind it. So we're able to do it in about 12 days to bring all the containers, and then it took a number of months zip it up, and then the landscaping was certainly added to it. So the premise behind it was we would save over a year between all the fabrication during this period, It turned out to be more of a year than 7 months. While we're doing all that, we saved all that time, and time is money. So that was the idea behind it. So it is, in principle, to save time. And as I said, it's an opportunity that one should grab. I now, having done it, not convinced that is really works. There are some of these container vendors. This was with giant containers. And there's other ones called plant prefab. They take much longer than they say they're going to take. So you don't have the value of time, save time. And that's something we learned having done it. It sounds great, sounds noble, but very difficult to pull off. So here are the containers being brought to the site. Again, what's interesting also is the containers that worked on the site, because very difficult to have a staging ground. So we had, it was right in between 2 streets, and very busy area and a confluence of all the freeways and an urban site. So it made sense to build it in factory, so there wasn't complexities of building on site. And again, given that political aspects of it, it was nice that the city council person was committed to the idea. And what's interesting about also is that when it was completed, there was a very important moment where the city embraced it. So there was a grand opening after it was opened. And wonderful to see the community come out and see the project and be able to see, here we are providing 54 units for supportive housing, those who are on the street, the unhoused. And I'm very happy to say that's fully leased, and they're very happy to be there. This, I think, is the future for Los Angeles. The land value is so much that they have to find these pockets of these leftover spaces in the city and utilize those spaces to be able to provide the housing as needed. There are over 67,000 unhoused in the streets of County of Los Angeles right now. There's a bird's eye view of the project, as you can see. Again, the Paseo really celebrates this idea of this front lawn, so to speak, where it really embraces the new culture, which I do think is important in Los Angeles, to get away from the culture of the car and embrace the idea of bicycles and walking. So those plays a big role. I quite like this picture because it shows the intensity of this urban condition where the streets, you can see the cars, you can see the kind of distressed buildings around it. And we do think this is going to represent a catalyst for change in the area. This was a no-go zone. There was a food desert. There was no food there. Nothing was there. So for us to be able to build this and provide 54 units, it meant a lot to us. And you begin to see the trees are being planted. Now these will grow to be 35 feet tall. And this is the wonderful area that is now their front lawn. As you go up in the building, as I mentioned, the circulation is in the central spine. And these are the outdoor spaces. So we're activating each roof as outdoor areas to sit. So I think for all those who've been multiple years on the streets, they really enjoy having these spaces to go in and hang out. And on the roof, we have the urban farm, as I mentioned. So this has been ran by an urban farm company. And they come in and they maintain it, make sure that the food is done well, and that this is all the vegetables and fruit that is planted here. So this is for the people in the building, but also on the weekends, they can sell it in the farmer's market on weekends, and that's the Paseo will be used for. There's the courtyard view of it there. So it's really about the ecology of where it's located. This particular project, it was a very, very challenged area. So we wanted to give them the opportunity to have some privacy and security in a courtyard. So all the individuals who live in the units, they have this individual way of joining their units and the entry doors. And yet you can see the intimacy of a courtyard down below. So there's an opportunity for them to start this process of re-engaging society by having to recognize your neighbor. And that's what's awfully important to providing this experience for them. View on the left is the walkway, and then the right-hand side is one of the units. I'm often asked about container buildings. Do they look like a container inside? No, they don't. You have to do a conditioned space. You have to have insulation, and you have to make sure it's a comfortable place to live. So these are very small areas. They're 420 square feet. There are 3 containers, forgive me, more than 420. The 3 containers are 8 by 20, which is 160 square feet, times 3, which is 480. So 3 containers represent 1 unit. So each unit is 480 square feet, and that represents a room for a kitchen. This is the living room area where you have a couch, and a table and however you want a TV or whatever, and then there's a bedroom right here. So you start to see the simplicity of it, but it works. It's a very simple space. From a design standpoint, one of the few ideas we like to do is have these vertical windows from floor to ceiling. It's one simple move that we're able to do with the budget. And it's something that elevates this quality, whereas sometimes when you think of a punched opening, it doesn't really filter light the same way, whereas you can see here, this actually has, obviously it's got some shades on it, but you can imagine that when you bring the window to the floor, you start to see patternings on the floors, and equally so when the sun is in different areas it has on the walls and ceilings. So these are one of the few moves we do. We also provide ceiling height of 9 foot 6 inches. So if we can provide higher ceiling and 1 or 2 windows that are floor to ceiling, it elevates the quality of the space, and still you're doing it from an efficient cost standpoint. And there's a bird's eye, as you can see. Paseo, circulation, you can come up here and you go over to this area, to this unit, swing up further, and then you can access this outdoor area, this one, and this area. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas that are outdoor spaces. As outdoor kind of engagement where people can come and gather and hang out. Here are all the container towers. As I mentioned, this is 3 containers representing 480 square feet. On the ground level here, they were startup companies. We call like incubators. So each one of these are organizations that live in South Los Angeles, and one is the food resources area. The other one is another one, which is a job training. So these are the so-called incubators that are working in the building. It's very specific to those in the building, both an incubator and also the idea of health is very important. So both food and social services, very important. And there's a view on the busy streets, that's Imperial. Again, compositionally, architecturally, the idea to take a conventional conventional container building, they tend to be stacked right next to each other. I'm sure you've seen it, where it's all about efficiency, but no, you can actually be playful with it. So what we ended up doing is playing with the geometries and be able to shift the axes of each of the container volumes. And it was twofold. One was, if you take a geometry of a building and you shift the geometry, that the sound from the freeway, which is critical, it bounces off differently than if you had a flat wall. So we didn't want to have a flush condition facade to the building because the sound was going to echo. But if you peel it apart and provide air spaces in between, in a way, it absorbs some of the air and the sound, so it is not as loud. So it was really interesting to use this idea of noise as a kind of a catalyst for an idea for the actual massing of the building. And that's what I believe in. When you're doing projects as an architect, you look for the opportunities to produce good architecture, good ideas. And it sometimes comes from that. It's about sitting down with your noise consultant. And he says, well, we shouldn't have a flat wall. Ideal, wonderful, like it. Let's shift the geometries. So that to me is the way that good architecture comes out of it. It's not a formal aspect, but it comes from information. That's why I always say our role as architects is not to design autonomous objects in cities, and not formal polemics drives it, but actually information from social, political, economic forces create better architecture. The opportunity to find and pull ideas out of those forces are really important, and your work tends to elevate if you do that. There's an early evening shot of the Paseo. And there's the main street. As you can see, each building is shifted, or a tower, and you can see the light filtering through to the courtyard. Contextually, you can see it fits there. It's near the freeway, it's industrial, it is, in a sense, urban, and the building can be representative that way. We like the color white because light bounces off it differently than other colors, and it's also optimistic. So we tend to do white buildings for supportive housing because it is more optimistic, which is very important for the nature of those type of buildings. So that's called ISA Intersections. We finished it about 10 months ago to a year ago. The next project is also supportive housing, and this is called MLK 1101. A number of critical ideas. We engaged the surrounding community where we wanted to bring uplifting design, equitable design to this typology. This happened before ISLA. It was the same client, but it was a housing project we did, supportive housing, before. We did work very closely with LOHA, the nonprofit client, And really very important from a sustainable environmental standpoint, we did have LEED Platinum on this building. So these are critical aspects that drove it. So it brings 26 units of permanent supportive housing to formerly homeless veterans and chronically homeless families. So this building has 26 units, but has 3 bedrooms. Because at this particular time, 6 or 7 years ago, there were quite a few families on the streets of Los Angeles. The breadwinner, perhaps the husband or the wife, lost their job, and then they eventually found themselves in a car and then ultimately on the street. But they were family. So this building was for them. So out of the 26 units, over 22 were 3-bedroom, and they're for families that were on the street. That was one of the critical things. Equally so, they were veteran families as well. So those are the things that drove it in terms of the programming. And as I mentioned to you, at present, there are close to 70,000 people experiencing homelessness in the streets of Los Angeles. And given, frankly, the need for housing in Los Angeles, and now we have another 10 or 15,000 people who lost their homes in the fire, Palisades fire and the Altadena fire, this is even more critical to be able to provide housing for all. And there was a number of people in those fires in areas that were nice, but they were houses that were built in the 1940s and 50s. It had been in their families for many, many years. They don't have the resources to rebuild. They're going to need to move elsewhere because of the drama and the sense of fear they have in terms of being able to rebuild where they were. So this idea that housing is so essential, and even more so now. It's also located in South Los Angeles. Needless to say, one of the city's poorest neighborhoods, where 33% of the population has an income below the poverty line. That's the market we're dealing with. That's the thing. That's the critical thing we're dealing with. And a college graduation rate of 4%. So you can see these are areas that need work of consequence produced. It was a vacant, unapproved lot, typical to most parts of city of LA, next to McDonald's, strip mall, and hodgepodge of rundown 2-story structures, as you can see. Working with host communities, we're able to envision this project as a catalyst for change. That was the critical thing. How can we produce architecture that will be an inspiration for the neighborhood? What's interesting is when we did the project, we had to present to the neighborhood group. And in the end, we produced our design. They looked at it and said, well, it's better than what we live in, and we're market rate. So they couldn't really complain, because the design in the end was stronger than the building they were in. So in a sense, design does matter. If you're producing supportive housing and you produce good architecture that's efficient, but actually has an architectural aesthetics or artistry to it, the neighborhoods, they can't really say no, because it's nicer than their building. So to have a supportive housing next to their building, but it's nice, well designed, it actually benefits the client. And that's what drives our work. I think that's a critical thing about our supportive housing. The work we do and what we produce is better than the buildings that are around it. So design does matter. There's just a quick diagram of the project. Ultimately, L-shaped building. This was to be the outdoor living room. One key issue was, given on this one, parking was required, we had to tuck the parking underneath the building, which meant we couldn't go subterranean, so we had to put it on grade, which meant we had to lift the building up, so then this outdoor living room ended up being one level above. We then were able to produce on the corner a retail here, which is an incubator. This is called Georgette's Mel's Fish Shack now. Above it is a community room. And then this represents the outdoor room. We did fold down the roof here so that it has more of an equitable way of addressing the sidewalk and the street. We didn't want to close it off. So thus we folded the roof down so it has a kind of generosity of space. And there's a big axis of the whole building at large. Section, as I said, it was LEED Platinum. So these are all the aspects that we did solar collector array, and that comes down here. This is where we have the solar hot water system. We also have a stormwater management plan as well. Equally so, we have passive design strategy with regards to cross ventilation. All the units are access of the outdoor walkway. So you simply open a window there on both sides, and you have this wonderful cross ventilation, which is ideal, so they don't have to use the AC. Equally so, this is a vegetated cool roof above the kitchen area, which is community room kitchen area. And of course, drought-tolerant plants, among others. So you can see that section. It speaks volumes of what we're doing in our building, carving out these strategic voids, providing light, air, and circulation, activating them, all those aspects, which I spoke briefly about it earlier to some students. That produces good architects, gives you opportunities to work with the massing and produce architecturally interesting forms as well, if it's driven by ideas like this. The building under construction. Again, conventional structure is as you stick construction like all over California. There's the green roof, vegetative roof being done. And that was an interesting moment because the resources, one of the state federal funding sources we had requested, can we do a green roof? And we said, absolutely. All those things came from actually the vendors who are the funding sources. So it's quite interesting that even as they're providing the funding, there's mandates that comes with it. We'll give you $1.5 million towards this building, but we'd like to have a sustainable component to it. Can we do a vegetated roof? And we said, absolutely. So ideas come from all these other sources. So architecture is a collective way of assembling ideas, and they come from everywhere. And if you just listen, you can hear them. And it produces better work. More construction shots. And there's the completed work. So this is the main axis down the center. We did produce a moment here, which is called a stoop, meaning that we push the security gate, which you do have to have, up at the end here. We didn't put it down here on the street. Thus, if you're on the street and you don't have a place to live, and you're on the street and you're homeless, you can come up here and sit here during the day. It's open 24 hours a day. So it's a generosity of the building saying this is for you as well. And that goes a long way in terms of respect for the building. There was no vandalism. There's no graffiti. That one gesture, in a sense, was proved to the community, which is a distressed area, we're going to give you this. In return, let's respect our neighbors. And thus, there was not a conflict in the building. Everyone seems to be enjoying it. It's called permanent supportive housing. And the proverbial word, the most important word is permanent, meaning if you have the opportunity to move in here, you can stay here for the rest of your life if you stick to the rules. See your social service representative, no drugs or alcohol, and be kind to your neighbors. If you do those three, you can stay there indefinitely, thus the term permanent supportive housing. So that's the view street. There's one of our Artemis lives in the building. And you can see from the outside in, there's the stoop. The other side, you can sit right there on the other side of the fence. And you can see the context, classic, typical LA. Circulation, all three levels. You access from the exterior. Shading, where we were able to provide shading at the top. But also the materiality of this project is a hybrid between metal exterior, cement board, which was a requirement by one of the funding sources. They wanted multiple materials. We did that, but we kept the building all white. We didn't want to have this hodgepodge of different materials that somehow break. They did it to break up the scale. I was convinced that you don't need to do that. You can change the material, but have a clarity of an idea. Thus the overall idea of the white building, which to me represents optimism. And there's the stoop right there. Plan, here's a typical plan. You come up the stairs right here, each level, and then you can see each bedrooms here. Here's like a smaller one bedroom. Here's the 3 bedrooms. See 1, 2, 3. Here's another 3 bedroom, 1, 2. Oh, sorry, that's looks to be 2 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms, forgive me here. So you can see they were able to stitch and weave the 3 bedrooms around the courtyard. View from the walkway above, looking down. And then again, typical unit. This one we flush the windows at the ground, and we also have the 9-foot, 6-inch ceilings. Again, simple, not big budgets. And there's a Thanksgiving dinner they have each year. It's been done about 6 or 7 years, but you can see it's the outdoor living room is how I call it. So can you produce outdoor spaces? On this note, when we designed the units, we actually provided small living rooms, but larger bedrooms and ADA compliant bathrooms, of course. But we made the living room small to encourage them to go outside. so they can engage again. That's part of the thing about architecture. You can use architecture to make lives better, meaning that if they can begin to assimilate in culture again and be able to engage and communicate with people, the better. And this represents how it's very active, this courtyard. Also, this also has what we have done is we also an out urban farm here. We have vegetables right there being grown. And this is the multi-pronged space, both a community room, kitchen, among other things. And there's a bird's eye view of the outdoor living room. But you can see, you can produce and bring architecture to supportive housing. There isn't a mandate that it has to be lacking of that. And I do know early on in our career in terms of these projects, you have that condition where the client will say, look, we just want to provide homes. We don't care about the architecture. We don't care if it's uplifting. Just make sure they have shelter. And our position is, well, it's also about their health. And their health is to have uplifting spaces. I believe that passive design strategy is critical. Thus, we had all the exterior access to these. There was a moment in this project where they said, why can't we just have a box and have a double loader corridor down the middle? Because that's a conditioned space. That's not a very pleasant world when you have hallways in the middle of housing. If you can pull the housing outside, or the circulation on the outside, and they can access from exterior, that works, and certainly can with the climate in Los Angeles. A view of the street. I like this also because you can see there was, once upon a time, gas was at that number. But there you can begin to see how the entry has this opportunity, this optimism of the street. You can see this building certainly elevates the architecture, or the street. That's how our conventional buildings you see on the rest of the block. And there is USC over here. You can see there's the Coliseum. The next one is market rate. It was a project I did about 15 years ago. Still represents an important moment in our career as a bit of a tipping point. It's called Formosa 1140. Again, big idea, providing green space, density simultaneously. Can you produce a green space and housing on the same site? This was critical because it was a public-private partnership. This project was actually a weaving of both the City of West Hollywood and our private developer, which is Archetype, which is the development company. The third one was, of course, is really look at this idea of amplified urbanism. Can you produce architecture that's not only producing housing, but also brings to the table a pocket park in the same property? Very unusual concept. I'll go briefly, I'll explain the kind of background to that. It is in West Hollywood, which is very interesting, very progressive city. It's very, needless to say, West Hollywood has a very dense horizontal density. Most of the work is 3 to 4 story apartment buildings and then smaller houses kind of tucked throughout the city. It is notorious, LA, for having a lack of public space. So this was really, the principal idea behind this project was to radically rethink that convention. Can you provide a parcel or a third of your privately owned building site as a publicly managed pocket park for the City of West Hollywood? And that was what we pitched the city. The reason behind it was this. That house was on the site, and they wanted us to keep that house and still tuck 11 units on that site. The problem was twofold. You had to provide parking, subterranean, which means you can't really underpin this house and tuck the parking underneath it. As you can see, it was falling apart. The City of West Hollywood gave us the mandate they wanted to keep this house. The only reason was that there was a lot of pushback against development, and they thought, okay, if you build your project, we're going to expect you to keep that house. Well, it couldn't work. So we came back to them and said, okay, what if we provide a pocket park for the city that anyone can use from 7 a.m. to sundown? And they bought the idea, and they said, okay, you can get rid of the house, build your 11 units, and we can actually provide $500,000 to do the park. So in a sense, we are trying to rethink the convention of the courtyard housing you see throughout Los Angeles and throughout elsewhere. There's your conventional courtyard housing. Thus, the courtyard housing block infill ends up like this, where all the common open space is only for those in the building. But what if you were to do a modified courtyard strategy And they were, in a way, convert or do an extroverted concept where you push, instead of this concept of these enclosed common open spaces, what if you push the volume to one side and then you provide a pocket park, which is overlaying the common open space requirements of housing with a public park for the community. And that's what we're able to do. So this represents a Formosa. But the nice idea, what if that site approached it the same way, and ultimately down the road, that one and that one. That meant you'd have a 90-foot by 360-foot park that all could be connected. Very interesting concept to rethink the city at large. You don't have to stick with the urban strategy, the urban grid, all predicated by cars. What if you were rethink the city for the person, for people to walk? And that was the premise behind it. So here's the big building. In terms of efficiency, all the units are identical. There's 10 units here. This one's a little bit different on the corner. And then here's your pocket park. So this is one property, and this is a public park and private land. And there's the section, meaning that there's your park, tuck the parking underneath the park, there's your building right there. So that's an interesting concept of public-private. This, in effect, is also a property line between the public, and this represents the private. So as a vertical section, you have a private parking underneath for the tenants and a public park on the top of it. Here it is under construction. And this is another thing we discussed earlier, that most of the work in LA is stick construction because labor is readily available and wood is readily available. Personally, I think that's going to change because of the fires that you're seeing in California now. There has to be an alternative approach right now. With climate change and the intensity of the winds and intensity of the fires, which are tenfold compared to they were 20, 30 years ago. They are wiping out cities. There are war zones in Los Angeles right now, but Altadena, Palisades, and elsewhere. And this will continue. In 2 to 3 months, same thing will happen. 3 to 6 months after that, another scenario will happen. So this idea of these disasters are going to come repeatedly. So there is a way that individuals like architects working with clients can produce fire-resistant houses. That means wood may not be on the table anymore because, by Lord, that is fuel for the fire. Equally so, the state and the local government has to engage you. The infrastructure also has to address it. They have to really recognize that between the brush, which surrounds all of Los Angeles, before you get to where all the houses are, that's edge condition. There has to be firewall. They have to produce a really robust, accurate way of handling that. And they have to be able to have the infrastructure in place to be able to mitigate these fires when they start, because once it takes over, it's a war zone. You cannot stop it. It gets so large that it wipes out everything. And all the fire department did during the Palisades fire, watched it. 10,000 homes were burned down. And they did nothing because it was so robust, so difficult. And they could have solved it if they had 1,000 fire truck and 2,000 firemen who were on the perimeter of brush and these flatlands like the Palisades and Altadena. Then you could have saved 10,000, 15,000 houses and wouldn't have damaged all those individuals who lost everything in it. So there was a lesson learned again. There was a fire 5 years ago in Woolsey Fire. Same thing happened, but they didn't learn from it. Anyway, not sure if it's going to be wood frame construction for years to come, but this is what we do in our practice. We find where the idea is. The idea in this was choreographing this facade. So we were very, very careful about how we could produce a building where, given the efficiency of all the units, we elevated the design by virtue of the materiality, the off-the-shelf decision to use metal, but also with regards to the cars and openings to where you have views from inside out. So where the patios are, you had to make sure you could look out. The walkways up here. So each one of these perforated metal and open spaces were carefully calibrated from inside out. So we went up on the scaffolding with the client and we looked out. We started to develop the balance between where you look through and see, and then what are the solid panels. And I like this project because it proves that it has an urban strategy. You've got this pocket park on private land. These 11 owners own this land, but it's run by the city. But how nice to be able to look out at a park and not another building 5 feet away. And what's nice about it is the building on the other side where we're taking this picture looks out at a park. And equally so, the building on the right-hand side looks at a park. So this one move solved so many urban issues, meaning that there were no green spaces in Los Angeles, the least amount in the United States. So here's a solution where you can produce what you need with the units, and we maxed out the units. We can own, at this point when this building was done, the parking dictated how many units you could put on the unit, meaning that if you can get 30 parking spots, that means you could do 11 units. So once you're prescribed the parking you can do, thus you can figure out how many units you can put on the site, because it's 2.25 per unit. And that's how we produce this. We're able to design it, give our client 11 units, and also provided this idea of Pocket Park. I want to talk about context in Los Angeles. Context is where you find it. So in this particular project, this Formosa Cafe, which is down the street, which is actually a cafe my dad, who was a film actor, used to hang out with Orson Welles. He was part of the Mercury Theater in the 40s and 50s. So I thought the opportunity was, Formosa Cafe was half a block from the site. So I said, okay, I'm gonna have a personal connection. So I went to my client and said, can we use the context of color for our building? And this was our third project with this client. He said, well, we did 2 others. We were able to lease it well. Yes, we'll find 11 owners who can live in a red and orange building. And they certainly did. I mean, some of those owners are still there. So it was that moment of opportunity for me for the third project. I'm not sure I would have been able to get away with this color strategy if it was our first project with that client. But because we're successful in the other 2, he went the idea. So context, here's the park, there's the building. More details. All the vertical patterning of the metal was red, and the horizontals were orange. This also represents, or goes back to a period of 3 years, or 3.5 years. I lived in New York City after I worked on the Louvre project for 4 years, having been embedded in art through the Louvre, although it was Greek and Roman antiquities, that particular museum. I wanted to be an artist, so I stepped away and crossing boundaries to be a painter. And during that period, I was very, very deeply immersed in painting, impasto techniques, glazing techniques, really understand the tools of painting. And compositionally, I felt my eye was refined by being a painter. So when I then ran out of money and couldn't get shows, I went back to architecture, crossed boundaries back, and then embraced architecture and its tools, which is the tools of architecture is fabrication and building. So this is what we ended up doing. But I brought, I believe, an eye to be able to look at buildings and be able to do things that are a little bit unexpected, for want of a better word. How can we produce an architecture that's fresh, that's not typical? And I hate typical. So we've tried to do that, and this building represents what we did. Plan, very simple, but again, looking at plans. Entry, living room area, dining, through here to kitchen and a study, which is also a bedroom if it need be. So in a way, it's like not a shotgun house, but it's continuous linear building. Stairs that go upstairs, and then tucked in the kitchen here. You can open a window here and open windows here, and you have cross ventilation. There's a view on the second floor looking down to the living room. We do have the balconies and the units on the 3rd and 4th floor, as well as balconies. You can see, sorry, the 1st and 2nd floors, you enter on the ground level, and the 2nd level is a balcony right here. So it's a bridge to it. And there's the second, as you come up the 2nd story, you have a bedroom, another bedroom, and then here's the balcony, private balcony here. And this is the double light space. We were just looking at a few moments ago, looking from up here, looking down. A few more ideas in terms of the units is that some units, we gave them opportunities. I know this is a little bit out of the box, but sometimes an extension of the bedroom could be using the bathroom, so it doesn't feel like it's a walled off space, but it feels more generous. Ultimately, all the toilets were actually in enclosed spaces, so we didn't have them there, but in the end, some people were fine with it. And there was a second strategy where the toilet was in this area and had its own door. But the extension of the room worked out quite well. The shower was exposed to the room. Walkway here on the 3rd level. You can see under construction, steel frame, and then the skin right there, and there's the walkway. And there's just an evening shot of the building. And again, you can see the balconies up here. 3 or 4, we also played with that in terms of each kind of framing of each balcony was a little bit different with the metal. The top 2 levels were 2-story, and all the decks were on the roof. So there were roof decks on the top of this building. That's where all the top units had their outdoor required private open space. In the end, is it possible in a city, through this idea of pocket parks, or the greening of the city, you can, if that represents Formosa right there, what if there was a larger idea that as a mandate was that as developers started to develop each individual site, that there was a requirement to provide some green space? You can envision, just conceptually, holistically, to speculate that you could start to reinvent how you walk the city through parks. And that's something I believe would be really interesting in the city. Equally so, you could certainly do that, but also in section. If there's Formosa, well, actually, no, this is my other project, Habitat 825, next to Schindler House. But if you have a building and all of a sudden this is public space, what if you had the opportunity to provide on a second level an open public space, bridging through sites like this? So it could be both in plan and section. You could have public realm stitched with the private realm in different ways. And I'm convinced that this would be a really interesting way of navigating the city as development comes and one starts to think about it in a more robust way. Very interesting if one could do that, to get away from the conventional and try for the unconventional. And Formosa affords that. That gave me that idea. Bit of some water here. We're nearly done. We have one more project, and then we're going to look at a dance school. We just finished this project. It's a co-living project, and it's in West LA. It's student housing for UCLA in the end. Ultimately, that is be housing for students, but it is open to anybody. So this is a project where we looked at co-living student housing, just recently completed, and it was really about prioritizing community. It brings 18 co-living units to West LA. Each unit has 4 to 5 bedrooms, totaling 79 total. Context views, this is a typical Los Angeles street, dense, very kind of robust, very different. And this represents the type of images actually you'll see in our book, Building in Place. We had a wonderful photographer go to all the sites and just photograph the context, people, and the lives around the sites. And these are the type of images we're able to bring to the book. There's the building under construction. You can see the context, typical LA, larger buildings, very nondescript, not unconventional, not very conventional buildings. And this is our site right here. So the big idea here was you start with massing. There's your building envelope. Well, how can we peel it apart like we like to do with all our projects? Peel it apart, have access from different views. That was the first move. The second move was, okay, open up the pedestrian access. Maybe we can modify the actual geometries of these opens. So it's not that the massing was modified, it was the circulation, the strategic voids were manipulated. They were open to provide more light in the courtyard, thus the actual units had a freshness to them. So it came from circulation, light. And if you use those as your mandate, then you can produce architecture that's a little bit different. There's our massing of the building right there. So pedestrian access from 2. This is the main thoroughfare over here. We actually did 2 housing projects over here for UCLA as well. So this is our 3rd student housing project in West LA for UCLA. So key to this development is, in a sense, a spatial social gradient. That's the thing that drove the project. So after you enter the complex, residents move through their shared private courtyards, and then they go vertical, meaning that as you enter the circulation spine, you come up a stair, and the first thing you experience is a study room, a living room for these units, dining, living, and game rooms. So the premise behind it is a layered context where all the bedrooms, the privatized area is around the perimeter, quite obviously having the windows and egress, among others. And then you have this layered aspect, which is the kind of, in a sense, kitchens, bathrooms. And the 3rd tier was the more public space, which extends outside. So then the outdoor spaces become opportunities to bring and extend your living room, dining room outside. So that idea is what we've done for many years, and we will continue. But this idea is very interesting from a co-living aspect. Can you produce these types of projects? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in one unit versus, and then some are like 5. But this idea that you can have individual bedrooms, 3 to 4 bathrooms separate, and then a study room or living room. So if you're here, you can certainly go over here into the dining area. So it's this idea that all the circulation, all the courtyards are activated. And that's what's really important for those who are doing courtyard projects. Bring program there, bring circulation, and that will bring it to life. There's a section. And just an early rendering of how that central spine will be. A tree in the middle, and you can imagine as the students or thus other people are living here that they will start to engage each other. West LA is unique because it's in the center of the city, so you have this hybrid between urban culture and students. So for them to live in this building, quite interesting because they'll meet other people. Maybe it's someone in the medical profession, maybe it's architects living there. But I think it's very interesting for students to have that opportunity. I believe it'll be 90 to 95% students from UCLA. But there will be other people who are open to it. Based on the Fair Housing Act, you can rent it to anybody. But it is catering towards students, given the co-living concept. There's an early rendering of it. And I have to say something in terms of our graphics. About 10 years ago, part of perhaps my interest in art, I felt like drawings in themselves are an end product as well. Can you produce a drawing that in a sense pulls you in, that is a little bit more abstracted? If you really want to do a rendering that's very realistic, take a photograph. But if you're doing a drawing, why not begin to rethink it? So this is a part of our strategy with regards to our graphics. It becomes a little bit more abstract. So we don't do realistic renderings. We believe drawings like these should be about the drawing itself and find something in it that interests you. So you'll see in our renderings, we do not do realistic ones. Is that good? Good. I said something right. There we go. But that's very important. And I think that's important to realize. You cannot see that the premise behind drawings is just to do as realistic as possible. It's irrelevant. My opinion, drawings are essential to be able to understand the soul of what you're trying to say. So it'll pull you in. And that's what's interesting if it's abstracted. So there's the building, and there it is finished. And again, there's a freshness to it. There's an idea behind it. It's co-living. It has an opportunity. It's doing something consequential. Students are on the streets. They're living in their cars. They have no place to live. So I'm honored to be part of the mandate of doing student housing. We have 6 different projects we're doing right now. Again, perimeter, singular, clarity of an idea, exterior, black metal, cuts in it, white, optimistic, courtyards, lighter. It's like if you take an apple and you cut into it, it changes in terms of its materiality if you cut into an apple. But the skin has that one idea, and then you cut into it, it has a secondary idea. It has an elevated quality to buildings when you think of it that way. But all of it is dealt with the actual in-between spaces, the circulation spaces, the spaces that you create to bring light into spaces. And that's what architecture is. It's not necessarily the volume, it's the in-between spaces that define the volumes, because it's driven by a good idea then. And this is what we're trying to do with this. That's a view towards the sky, inside. And there's the courtyard again. Every single unit, big idea, big sliders, they can open out to here. There will be tables and chairs out here. We just finished it, so they really haven't really furnished it yet. The leasing started actually March 1st. So right now, I don't know, they've got 7 students who have committed to it, but they will be over the next month, they will be finding the tenants. But again, you can see that there's an energy to the space, and you can envision if someone's walking here, talking to someone there, equally hope someone up here. I think it's very good for students to, when they leave school, to go someplace where they also engage people. It's not great when you're in school and you go home and you close your door and you don't engage. But this is encouraging you to do it. Certainly the co-living concept works, but also this, which is to me, I call the outdoor living room area, which is these represent places where they can go outside and hang out and talk to each other. Those look at the cuts there from the outside. So also open to the street, but also compositionally. As a painterly way, if one looks at that elevation, You're playful with the windows. You've got this idea of a black and white, which I think is really critical colors. Equally so in terms of the red and orange. It has great value. And there's the units inside. So we have this idea all the circulation is black rubber. So all the circulation is this darker gray, which is the connection, and then the kitchen and the bedrooms are the lighter wood, and then access to exterior. But again, all the materials here, this is just, in a way, this is Eurocolor plywood. So you can have off-the-shelf materials, but there's a freshness to it. You don't need to have this kind of mandate of this kind of conventional materials. You can do something more interesting. And this is what all the kitchens are. Certainly the color also plays a role. But the units are nice inside. And they were done on budget. This will be eventually in outdoor spaces where they'll all hang out and do stuff. And the other thing is it's very much, the interior is choreographed as well as these overlays of these walkways and these stairs going up and down. So there's an energy there that's really working to a degree. And there's a bird's eye view of it. We activated, like all of our projects, the roofs, again. We're growing vegetables and fruit on the roof. But again, this is stuff you can imagine this is all being used by the students. I'm very happy with this project. It's something that it will, in the future, I think co-living will become more and more robust in terms of shared culture and the lack of amenity, the lack of resources people have. If you can live in an area where you have your own bedroom, you can close the door if you choose to, shared kitchen living. Perhaps the younger generation will do that. Now, certainly when you get older, you may not want to. I'm not sure if I would do it, but I do think there's an opportunity. And there's certainly people open to the idea. You have your privacy, thus the plan we did. You have a whole perimeter. Go to your room, you need to be yourself, close your door, you're there. You have your operable window, you have a desk and your bed. If you want to go outside, you can hang out in the kitchen, or you can go up on the roof or different areas, but you have those opportunities. But I do think this is the future. We're doing a co-living right now in Detroit, and I do believe we'll be doing more and more. So we're getting close to it. We started at 5:42, and it's 6:42. Okay, this will be 5 more minutes, okay? I'll take a break here. I'm going to show you one last project which shows that all these ideas about social equity, all these ideas of the in-between spaces, all the ideas of letting buildings evolve from how people use space can also be applied to other programs. We just completed the Sandy Simon Center for Dance at Chapman University. Actually, when I say we, just finished about 18 months ago. A very exciting project for us. It is a transformation of a 1920s industrial packing house, the largest and last operated in Southern California. So this was packing oranges. It was in Orange County, thus the name came from lots of orange groves, and that's what drove that part of California. It was, in a sense, a time when they've all been kind of receded now, and oranges are coming from other places. But one time, this was the, in a sense, the hot point of where you got oranges in Orange County. The project adhered closely to its historical preservation standards as well. This was in a historical landmark building, as you can see right here. It's something that was part of the mandate when the university approached us and said, okay, we want you to do a dance school, but we have to keep the exterior the way it is. And that was fine with me. It was restored. We restored it to its glory. It was a wonderful space. It had multiple nice ideas behind it. Equally so, was this space, which is the main space. As you can see, they were packing all the oranges. So here you can see the original interior of the Sunkist Villa Park Orchards. That was what it was called. And it does demonstrate the factory assembly line. It was originally built as a 2-story headquarters in 1918. It was a post and beam, heavy timber, framing construction. And it was somewhat representative of the industrial vernacular at the time. So this was all very much embedded in the context and culture of where it was, which I really like. It was a great opportunity to work inside a building like this. You can see it had some wonderful roof ideas in terms of we kept all these. And here you can see that the perimeter. Here you can see it's a 70,000 square foot project we did. Here is this is a sawtooth roof here. And then the dance school we designed is in this space right here. Here's the entry right here. And here's the context of Orange County. Not particularly interesting, frankly, but really excited about this project. And the character, and it was really important, and that was actually defining for this project. So the exterior was retained and rehabilitated. Interior-wise, what we did is we did keep this main space, but just completely redid it, frankly. But we love this. We love the roof, which is the sawtooth roof here with all this existing windows. We kept all this. The main thing was this. This represents 30,000 square feet, this floor plan. We need to double that square feet. So with that in mind, they then showed us this space and said, here's the other space we need. How do we marry both levels and produce an architecture that is elevated and optimistic? And that was our goal. So the basement was deteriorated condition, had been underutilized, was literally a storage space for 40 years, never used. So we were going to bring this back to life. So we had to provide usable space within this space as well in terms of the main space above and also this one. So the portion of this was awfully challenging, but we saw an opportunity. There's the section of the building. So here's the main space right here. We carved out, the key thing was we carved out large openings in the floor plate to bring light down below. We actually reused the existing maple floors as cladding, so you'll see all the maple floors that we carved out and took away from here on the main level, we reutilized it, and that was all the wall. That's what's saying, using materials that's used for flooring, use it as a wall material. Use things that are unexpected. That, in a way, elevates the design. Equally so that there was a green plaza down here, so actually opening at the lower level, which is the dungeon, made sense, so we were able to provide that as well. There's an axonometric, big idea. This was a performance space here. We dropped it to the lower level. We cut out all these openings, as you can see, to bring light down below. On the main level, we had 4 dance studios. And on the mezzanine of the performance space, we had a classroom and also hangout space for people who can have classes and actually have discussions outside with each other. So this project, again, was driven by the idea of in-between spaces. The dance school, all the students would come in and it was basically a hallway, 5-foot hallway. No place to hang out, no place to sit. So we made that the kind of mandate on the project. How can we create a dynamic and diverse set of programs? How can we provide a performance space and a social space for all the students? Multiple users, there were students, faculty, visitors, audience. So it was a balance between all those programs and also a balance between indoor, outdoor. We had all those aspects that we were kind of embracing. The challenges of the project was how do we integrate that large floor above and integrate the level below, which had no light at all. So our solutions in the end is what led to this. Here you can see the performance space, and you start to see down below. Here's a model we built that shows the circulation. And the circulation had this fluidity to it, because when you're walking, you tend to walk in a kind of fluid way. Equally so dancers, the movement of dancers. Thus, that opportunity of thinking about the users, why not make the circulation more fluid, dynamic, and have the rational boxes for the studios, which was about working, about the production of dance. But the in-between spaces became much more fluid. Here's a number of views of it under construction. And there's the finished project. As you can see, the in-between spaces became the life of the space. And the student, they were all the students. They really use them. The day this opened, they were really excited because they came from a very conventional, generic box with tiny studios, just hallways connecting them, no places to hang out. And we gave them this opportunity to be able to hang out in between the studios. Here are the studios on the left-hand side. Again, elevated materials. We worked with polygal. That idea of the light filtering through it to the different spaces was very important. And we have a little detail we did on the performance space, which was the heart of the design. We took the sawtooth of the roof, and that informed the geometry and the way we treated the envelope, the building envelope at the performance space. As you can see, it has that also staggered sawtooth concept to it. And there's a view up from the mezzanine, looking down to the main level and further down to which used to be the dungeon. As you can see, the light filters all the way down. We painted everything above white, so we kept everything. But what was nice is by pushing the performance space down at the main level, the lower level, we provided opportunities for the mezzanine, which they weren't expecting that additional square feet. So we provided them an extra 12,000 square feet just by making that move, and they were very happy about it. So we activated the roof. And that goes back to our ideas in housing, where we always activated the roof. So I always call it the fifth elevation. So we actually brought those ideas to this project. So no matter what you do as an architect, whether it's a dance school or a housing project or a cultural project or an infrastructure, same ideas can be applied to all of them. And that's what's interesting as an architect, that you have something that's important to you, you bring it to all your different projects. There's looking into the studio and, of course, hanging out in the in-between spaces. And there's the recycled wood. That was the flooring on the main space that we tore out and reused for all the walls. But that space down here was that dungeon. As you can see, now it's not a dungeon. Put in a kitchen area, offices on this lower level. Details looking up. Again, we're very, very committed to good detailing. That's very important. I know the whole term God is in the details, but it plays a big role. You have to detail these buildings well, because as these materials meet each other, make sure that's resolved. It makes a big difference. A few more images, detail of the performance space on the left, and there's another view of the outdoors looking at the performance space. And inside the performance space looking out. But wanted this feeling of optimism, this idea that they're coming here, they want to be here, they want to learn to be a dancer. That's important. Can you produce architecture or buildings which encourages and excites students to come? And that's what I feel like we've done with this. They're really happy with this building, and they're really enjoying it right now. So I'm very happy and honored to have had this opportunity to provide these spaces for these students, which I think we do with our student housing as well. Mezzanine level view. And this is on the top mezzanine levels. And then there's a view of the main space. So in closing, these ideas that underpin our work in housing also can be applied to dance schools and other projects. And these are elements that I think that all architects, over time, you ask yourself, what's important to you? And bring that to your projects, and that will make your work unique. And that's where you bring your artistry. All right, thank you very much.
Lorcan, thank you. That was amazing. We have time for some questions. Anyone that has a question? Yes.
How does one handle
My hearing isn't great. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, that's great. Use the mic.
How does water handle water collection? Oh, I mean, how do roofs handle water collection?
How do they roofs handle water collection? You collect and you direct it to cisterns, among others. So you have a place where it goes. But you can take it off roofs, into drain, down to cisterns. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, that's how it collects it. And then that can be used for bioswales and irrigation and all the different things. That's how we did from MLK.
So for your housing projects, how do you keep a budget in mind when designing them for lower income families, lower income students, and help prevent those in higher income brackets from buying out the place and subleasing it or whatever at those higher unreachable market points?
Affordable housing and supportive housing is federal and state funding. You can't do that. It's mandate. So you don't have that issue. You might have issues which happens all over the place, certainly West Hollywood, if you do an apartment building and it's market rate, but it's rent control. If it's market rate but rent control, then you have issues where, of course, they will find ways to kick people out and then triple the rent. That's an issue. Absolutely. It's gentrification all over the world. But when it comes to supportive housing, that's a completely different story. You can't, and that part of the issue is when you have federal funding and state funding, it becomes that indefinitely.
Hi, Lorcan. First of all, thank you so much for visiting the Urban Housing Studio this evening. We're doing housing, we're doing affordable housing, and my question goes in that direction. What can you say are the main differences, because I didn't see it, between affordable housing and market rate housing?
What's the difference?
Yes?
I would say affordable housing twofold. It's where you get your funding for that portion of it. There is a mandate, for example, now at 20% of all market rate has to be affordable. You don't differentiate, frankly. All the buildings are done at the same level. You don't differentiate. If it's actually a building that is mixing the two, if it's a full affordable housing project, then it's about where your resources are coming from. That is from different funding sources. I don't think, the thing about affordable housing is you are required to work with prevailing wages, meaning that it's 25% more than market rate. Now, prevailing wages means union. So in Los Angeles, if you do supportive housing or affordable housing, both those, you have to have labor that's union, which means it costs quite a bit more. That's the kind of discrepancy between when people ask, why is affordable housing or supportive housing more expensive than market rate? It's because of the labor. It's 25% more. Equally so, when you do projects that are affordable, the mandate of what you have to do and the requirements expect the cost to be more. So that's the quandary between the two. The challenge is when it comes to affordable housing, if the labor is 25% more, which it is, if it's union, that means that 25% is being taken out of the architecture because you're having to put it in labor. The challenge of an architect is to find a way to keep the architecture and then find very resourceful ways of working with being very efficient in terms of how it's laid out. As I mentioned to you in the studio, how do you make sure your bathrooms and kitchens are stacked vertically? Everything works efficiently because 80% of the cost of buildings is infrastructure. So I don't know if that answers your question, but maybe you can elaborate?
Well, actually it does, but I'm really moved by the fact that you have never sacrificed quality in design
No.
for affordable housing.
No,
So-
I think I know how to build and I know where the cost goes. I think as an architect to know how things go together is really important so I don't make mistakes. I know what cantilevers should be 8 feet, no more. I know when you design projects, you really have to design them in such a way that you know that when it's priced out, that the big ideas in terms of the infrastructure, HVAC, all the other components are actually very cost-effective strategies. That frees you up to be able to do the other elements. And when I do it, and then I pitch the idea or through the art of persuasion, the client says, look, we nailed the budget, there's an opportunity. Why don't we carve this opening here? Why don't we think about this material? Why don't we try these other things? They always tend to be more open to it. So I think our work is based on the ability to persuade clients to go that next level, that there is a value in design. And that's what we do. So there's zero difference between our market rate and our supportive housing, zero.
That's awesome.
We have 7 or 8 others that are finishing up. They're all the same level. There's zero difference.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think you can do it. You just have to be really strategic about it.
Since I have the microphone,
Yeah.
you showed the first project, it didn't have parking. How were you able to produce that project without parking? We visited with the studio Cul-de-sac in Tempe. They have a very low ratio of parking. But the question is, how were you able to produce that project without parking?
Meaning that you would think that there would be a need for the parking?
I don't know.
No, I think the city is changing LA. They're finally done with all the parking requirements because it's literally preventing new housing because of the cost of parking. So they said, okay, there is no requirement for parking.
It's a strategy.
Strategy. And they're doing it, and surprisingly enough, people are okay with it. If you have a nice space to live and you have a choice between, okay, where's my parking spot? And they say, well, we only have 11 spots for 54 units, but you have a great place to live. And they go, okay, they park in the street.
Thank you very much.
That's what they do. I mean, you'd be surprised. They're nimble. People are resourceful, in my opinion. If you have a great apartment and you go, okay, do I make a choice? Do I live in a great apartment that's great architecture with no parking, or get a crappy building with your parking spot? Which way are you going to go? And there is a small, very small thrust towards public transit, perhaps more so than you think. There's the Expo line of quite a few light rail throughout Los Angeles, so people are buying into it. I teach at USC. I've been teaching for over 30 years. SciArc, the AA, Cranbrook, Otis, now USC the last 12 years, 13 years. I take the Expo line from my office to this USC. It's amazing. It's an 8-minute ride. I don't have to get in my car. So I do think when you look at public transit in Los Angeles, it is changing for the better.
Hi, I'm Jay, and I know you said that LOHA Architects is currently working on 6 housing projects around
Student housing, yeah.
student housing
And
projects.
about 10 affordable housing, yeah.
A bunch of others, yeah. And I was wondering how your firm sees prefabrication evolving in the context of affordable housing in Los Angeles, specifically with like the strict zoning laws and the construction costs and things like that.
Prefabrication?
Yeah.
Big picture. We have 4 or 5 that we're doing right now, which is prefabrication. They're modular. They're being built in factories. There's one on our website we just finished called Stanley. I think in principle, it is potentially a future. Right now, it's ahead of the game, meaning that, no, sorry, it's not ahead of the game, behind the game. Meaning that we design these projects. There are vendors like Plant Prefab, Giant Containers, all these different companies, modular companies that are doing it, but they're not able to keep up with their commitment of schedule. The purpose of modular is you save time. It's not less expensive. Modular, if you want to build a wood frame structure, it's less money than modular. And that's a surprise to people. They think, oh, it's got to be cheaper in the factory. No, it's not. What you save is time, and time is money. So what we're discovering with our modular is it driving the clients crazy, our nonprofit clients, because they're saying we'll be done in 10 months. 18 months later, they're not even done. But they have everything in the factory. They're controlling it. And the clients have to say, what can we do? Our product is in their factory. They're 2/3 of the way through. It's supposed to be done 10 months ago. So we are dealing with issues. They're not committing to their schedule. And that's the thing that hasn't caught up with reality. They will someday, don't get me wrong, but now it's not. If they tell you it's going to take, because the whole thing's about time. And that's why they get the commission, but once they got the commission, they'll take as long as they want. And that's what's causing the problem right now. But there is, once they figure that out, I think modular is certainly an option. Stanley, I didn't show it, but it's one of our projects. And it's same story. It was during the pandemic. It was a headache. It took forever. The supply chain was problematic. And the problem with modular is that you have 2 players. You have the product being made in the factory, and you have the GC on the site who is prepping the site for these modular to be stacked and put in. If it's off by 1/4 of an inch, it's a problem. What's happening is that commitment to doing the work exactly is not there. And so we're discovering some issues with that kind of marrying of the 2 systems. And then there's a legal issue. If the GC is responsible as the means and methods of construction, and that they have to do it by code, but the product is not complying, who's responsible? Is the product designer or the builder, or is it the GC? So that's another issue that they're trying to reconcile. So there's a few issues that have to be figured out, but I do think modular is certainly on the table. We have literally 6 or 7 modular projects right now. So they are the future, but they haven't caught up, and maybe they will.
Lorcan, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, you guys need a dance school, let me know.
Oh,
Oh.
Oh, I was at this, looking at this space, I don't see any interior lighting, just the clerestory window at the top. I'll call them clustery. What do you do at night?
Sorry?
What do you do for lighting at night? I mean,
It's all lit up. It's all these, you can't see, but there's lighting along all those beams.
pardon?
There's lighting all across the beams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's lighting everywhere.
Lorcan also brought with him 4 copies of his book if anybody wants to purchase
Yeah.
a book. All right, thank you, everyone. See you March 21st. Have a great evening.